Okay, so today we're diving into Instructional Systems Design.
ISD.
ISD.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful.
It is. But, it's all about creating effective training programs, right? But today we're going to focus on something a little bit different. We're looking at lean-ISD.
Lean-ISD.
And our case study today is featuring TMC Stores.
Oh, yeah, TMC.
TMC, big convenience store chain.
Huge. And they went through this massive re-engineering effort.
Massive.
And needed to, revamp their entire training program.
The whole thing.
Yeah. And we've got excerpts from their story.
Oh, cool.
Told from two very different perspectives.
Okay.
A brand new ISD practitioner.
They're going to learn a lot.
Thrown in the deep end.
Trial by fire.
Right. And then the CFO.
Ah, the CFO.
Who was initially very skeptical about the whole thing.
I bet.
Yeah. So this is going to be fun.
This is really interesting because you're going to see those two sides of it. The down in the trenches ISD person and then the executive suite.
Yeah. And they used a method called TCT, which is a type of lean ISD. So before we really get into, the nitty-gritty of what TMC did, can you just give us a quick overview of just lean ISD in general and how PACT kind of fits in?
Absolutely. So lean ISD it's about applying the principles of lean manufacturing to the training world.
Okay.
So think of it like eliminating waste in a factory.
Great.
But instead of materials, you're eliminating unnecessary steps and redundancies in the training development process.
Interesting.
And then PACT is one specific methodology that falls under the lean ISD umbrella.
Okay.
It stands for Performance Analysis, Content Development, Training, Implementation, and Continuous Improvement.
The mouthful.
Yeah. But it's known for its focus on data-driven decision-making and its iterative approach. You're constantly refining the training based on feedback and results.
Gotcha. So that's like a very high level.
Yeah.
All right. So let's jump into the TMC story a little bit.
Okay.
He had this new ISD person who was, like I said, just thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
And the case study mentions that they started by going through TMC's own internal training program.
Drink from the fire hose a little bit.
Yes, exactly. And they had something called a T&D path.
Okay.
And even a T&D novel.
That sounds fun.
Right? I'm guessing that's not your typical corporate training manual?
Probably not the typical dry, boring stuff.
No.
So the T&D path is essentially a personalized learning roadmap for each employee.
Oh, okay.
It outlines the specific knowledge and skills they need for their role and guides them through the training process.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the T&D novel, well, it's their creative take on a training manual. Trying to make it engaging, story-driven, a little more fun.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And speaking of interesting approaches, they also mentioned in the case study something about spies being used in the pilot testing phase.
Spies.
What was that all about?
Corporate espionage.
Well, they used their top performers,
Okay.
their master performers, as spies
Oh, I see.
during the pilot testing.
Gotcha.
So these spies, they went through the training alongside regular employees, but their feedback was evaluated separately. So they're kind of like secret agents testing out the training.
Yeah, testing it out, giving that feedback.
So what was the advantage of doing that?
So it allowed them to get a unique perspective on the training's effectiveness.
Okay.
They could compare the feedback from the spies who already possessed the desired skills to that of regular employees so they could gauge how well the training was bridging the knowledge gap.
That's clever. I like that.
Very clever.
Okay, now let's talk about the CFO a little bit.
The CFO.
The case study kind of paints him as this real numbers guy.
Yeah, bean counter.
Yes, laser focused on ROI.
Return on investment. Got to see those numbers.
And he was really worried about the cost of all this retraining.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he wasn't thrilled about this whole project.
I can't imagine he was jumping for joy at the idea of spending a bunch of money on training.
Right.
When he's got his eye on the bottom line.
But he eventually becomes this huge supporter of this lean ISD approach.
He came around.
So what caused that shift?
Well, as the project progressed, he started seeing the benefits.
Okay.
Not only did the lean ISD process streamline the training development, saving time and money, but it also provided data that could be used across the whole organization.
So they weren't just using this for training.
Not at all.
Interesting.
They were using it for everything from hiring decisions to performance reviews and even compensation adjustments. It was like they inadvertently created this knowledge management system just by going through this lean ISD project.
Okay, so even though he started out as a skeptic, he ended up seeing lean ISD as a strategic tool, not just this training expense.
Exactly, and that's a really important takeaway. Lean ISD, when done well, can really drive business value.
And that's what it's all about, right?
That's the whole point.
So we've set the stage with this basic understanding of lean-ISD PACT. We've gotten into the TMC story a little bit. We're going to pick it up in part 2 and kind of dive deeper into the challenges that they faced, how they overcame them, and ultimately what lessons we can all learn from their experience. Welcome back to our deep dive into lean-ISD.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Back at it.
We are exploring how TMC Stores used this approach to revamp their training.
Big project.
Huge project. After a company-wide re-engineering effort.
Massive.
They used a method called PACT.
PACT, yeah.
Which is a type of lean-ISD.
Uh-huh.
And we're breaking down their journey to see what lessons we can all learn from it.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there is.
A lot of good stuff.
In part 1, we talked about some of the techniques that they used, like their T&D paths. Personalized, and using their top performers as spies to test out the training.
Always got to have the spies in there.
And we saw how the CFO went from
skeptic,
a total skeptic,
to a believer,
to a champion for lean-ISD.
It's a good story.
It is a good story, but let's get into like the nuts and bolts of their process.
All right, let's do it.
The case study mentions they use this very structured approach for like analyzing performance gaps and then designing the training.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So the PACT process, it all starts with a deep dive into what they call performance analysis.
Oh, okay.
So TMC put together these teams of subject matter experts.
Okay.
And those master performers that we talked about.
The spies.
Well, some of the spies, yeah.
Okay.
But really the people that knew the ins and outs of the work.
Okay.
And they held a series of these really intensive meetings to analyze the work.
Like brainstorming?
Yeah, I mean, they really dissected everything, you know, every task, every little bit of knowledge and skill that was needed. And they tried to figure out where the gaps were between what people were currently doing and the desired outcomes.
Yeah, it sounds intense.
It was intense.
The case study mentioned some people were actually sent home from these meetings.
Sent home?
Yeah, they were told to send back the right person.
Oh, wow.
If they weren't a true expert on that particular topic.
No messing around.
No messing around.
And that just highlights a key principle of lean-ISD, right? Involving the right people. You got to have the right people in the room to get that good information to build good training.
Yeah, but we talked about earlier how some departments were hesitant to give up their top performers for the project.
Yeah, they didn't want to lose their best people.
They did not. So how did TMC overcome that?
It's a common challenge.
Yeah.
Managers always worry about that, you know.
Productivity.
Losing productivity, exactly.
But as the project went on and people started seeing the value, that resistance started to fade away.
It did.
The case study actually says that departments were begging to have their master performers involved by the end.
Begging. That's awesome.
What caused that shift?
Well, I think it was a few things.
Okay.
First, the leadership at TMC did a really good job of communicating why this project was so important.
Okay.
And how it would benefit everybody.
Okay.
And they made sure that those subject matter experts and the master performers
felt valued.
Yeah, they felt their input was taken seriously.
I guess you could say they were empowered.
Exactly, empowered. And I think people started seeing the results.
Okay.
You know, they could see their expertise being translated into training that was actually making a difference.
So it sounds like creating that culture of collaboration and ownership was really important to getting everyone on board.
Absolutely. You know, lean-ISD, it's not just tools and techniques. It's a whole philosophy.
Okay.
It's about empowering people and working together towards a common goal.
Okay, so what about the design of the training?
The design, yeah.
The case study mentions something called design review teams.
Okay.
What was their role?
So after they did all that analysis,
right,
they had these week-long design team meetings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they took all the data that they gathered, you know, from the analysis meetings, and they used it to create really detailed blueprints for the training.
Okay.
But they didn't just leave it to the ISD folks.
Okay.
They brought in those master performers and subject matter experts again to make sure that the training was really grounded in reality.
So even in the design phase, they were still like heavily involving
the people who do the work.
The people who do the work.
Yep, because they're the ones who know how it's really done.
Right. And the design review teams were kind of like an additional layer of feedback.
Yeah, it was a wider group.
Okay.
They included people from different departments and levels just to get a broader perspective and make sure that the training was meeting the needs of lots of different people.
I'm seeing a theme here.
What's that?
They really put a lot of emphasis on Gathering input and feedback.
It's so important
Yeah.
to make sure you're creating training that people actually want to take.
That's relevant.
And that actually works.
And engaging.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about the development phase.
Development.
How do they actually create the materials?
Okay, so once they had those designs,
The blueprints.
yeah, those blueprints,
Yeah.
then a team of instructional designers took over.
Okay.
That's where they use their expertise.
In learning theories
Yeah, learning theories, all those principles of instructional design,
and the tech stuff.
and the multimedia technology that's right to create the actual training materials.
But even in this phase, TMC didn't lose sight of
Right.
like the real world relevance.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they continued to consult with those subject matter experts and master performers.
Okay.
They gathered all those specific examples and scenarios, case studies,
Oh, wow.
to make the training feel real.
So they didn't just want the training to be theoretically good.
No.
They wanted it to be something that people could actually use
Immediately.
in their jobs.
On-the-job learning.
Okay, so even in development, they kept looping back to
The people who are closest to the work.
the people who are in the trenches.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the pilot test phase,
Pilot test.
where they got to see how all that work translated into
Actual learning.
actual learning.
Yeah.
And those spies really came into play here.
The spies are back.
The spies are back. What did they learn from their feedback?
Oh, it was invaluable.
Really?
Yeah, because they could compare the spies' responses to those of like the regular employees.
Okay.
And that helped them see how effective the training was at, teaching people new things.
Filling those gaps.
Filling the gaps, exactly. And the spies could point out areas where the training maybe wasn't clear.
Okay.
Or where it could be even more efficient.
So they were like a benchmark,
A benchmark, yeah.
helping TMC see how well the training was working for people who didn't already have that expertise.
Exactly.
And based on that feedback, they made revisions before rolling it out to the entire organization.
Right. Always improving.
That iterative approach, it's such a big part of lean-ISD.
Constant feedback, always iterating, always getting better.
It's not about like finding the perfect solution right away.
No.
It's about that continuous cycle of learning and improvement.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen how TMC used the PKCT process to analyze those performance needs. Design really targeted training, develop engaging materials,
And then test and refine them.
test and refine them rigorously based on that real-world feedback.
It's a good process.
Pretty compelling example
Yeah,
of lean-ISD in action.
it really is.
But before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I'm curious, what's like really resonating with you so far?
Yeah.
What parts of TMC's journey really stand out? And like what questions are coming to mind for you?
Yeah, take a minute and think about your own organization.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you're facing?
What are those gaps?
The gaps.
Could a lean-ISD approach help you bridge those gaps and reach your goals?
It's worth considering.
We're going to explore those questions and a whole lot more in part 3.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into lean-ISD.
Part 3.
Part 3, we're wrapping up our look at TMC Stores and how they use this approach to really transform their training after a major re-engineering.
Huge effort.
Huge effort.
They had a lot to do.
Yeah, they did.
It wasn't easy.
We've explored their process, their structured approach to performance analysis, their focus on getting the right people involved, that iterative design process.
Spies.
The spies.
Yeah, forget the spies.
They were so important to this process.
Key players.
But I think it's important to say that, no big change like this happens without some bumps in the road.
Yeah, every project has its challenges.
Right. So even implementing lean-ISD with the best of intentions, the best plan, you can still hit some snags.
Absolutely. One common challenge is just getting people to buy into the change.
People don't always like change.
No, they like to stick with what they know, even if it's not the best way of doing things.
That if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes things are broken.
Just not in an obvious way.
Right. And that's where strong leadership really comes in.
Oh, okay.
Leaders have to communicate that vision.
Why we're doing this.
Why lean-ISD is important, how it's going to benefit the whole organization, and how it's going to impact each individual.
So you can't just like announce we're going lean and expect everyone to jump on board.
No, you got to paint the picture,
Of that future state.
Exactly. Connect it back to those big goals.
And address people's concerns.
Yeah, be upfront about the challenges.
Okay, so that's getting people to buy into the change.
Yeah.
What about getting buy-in from like the subject matter experts and those master performers?
The spies.
Those spies and all the other people who are really good at what they do.
Yeah, those folks.
it can be tough to get them on board because
They're busy.
they're busy. They've already got a lot on their plates.
They're the ones getting the work done.
Right. And we saw this in TMC. Some departments didn't want to give up their top people for the project.
Yeah, worried about losing productivity.
Exactly. So how do you address that concern?
Well, you have to really emphasize how important their involvement is.
Okay.
Tell them that you need their expertise.
Their insights.
Yeah, their insights to shape the training to make sure that it's relevant and that it's actually going to work.
Make them feel like
Valued partners.
valued partners in the process.
Yeah, and sometimes a little incentive can help.
Like what?
Some recognition.
Public recognition.
Public recognition, professional development opportunities, maybe even a small stipend.
Okay, so acknowledge their contributions.
Exactly. Make them feel appreciated.
Okay, so we talked about change management. We talked about getting buy-in from the experts. But there's another challenge that I can think of.
What's that?
How do you make sure that all of these training materials that you create with all this effort stay up to date?
Ah, that's a good word.
The business world changes so quickly.
It does. Everything's moving so fast.
Skills can become obsolete really fast.
All the time.
So what do?
You have to build in a system.
A system.
A system for ongoing review.
Like a maintenance schedule.
Yeah, kind of like that you're always checking, making sure that the information is current.
And revising as needed.
Revising, updating.
So it's not a one and done situation.
Definitely not. You're constantly refining.
And technology can play a big role here, right?
It's a huge role.
Using things like a learning management system,
LMS. Yeah.
Or even just like an online knowledge base.
Keep everything in one place.
Yeah, and that way you can update it really easily.
And everybody has access to the latest and greatest information.
And this all goes back to something we've talked about a lot.
Data.
Data lean-ISD is all about
using data
to make decisions and improve.
Measure everything.
Track those key metrics like
completion rates,
how much people are learning,
knowledge retention,
and most importantly,
performance improvement.
Performance improvement, you've got to see that the training is actually making a difference.
That's the whole point.
So you're making data-driven decisions, not just guessing.
Right. You got the data to back it up.
Review the data, share it with stakeholders, and use it to improve.
It's like a compass guiding you in the right direction.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into lean-ISD, what are the key takeaways?
All right. So first things first, embrace that lean-ISD mindset. Challenge those assumptions, seek efficiency, and focus on delivering real value.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And second, remember those people.
The people.
The subject matter experts, the master performers.
The spies.
The spies. You need all those people.
Bring them in.
Collaborate, work together to create great training.
And finally,
data.
Use that data.
Track it, analyze it, use it to improve.
It's been a fascinating look at lean-ISD, and TMC's story has given us a lot to think about.
It's a great example of how to do it right.
It really is. And I hope we've inspired some of our listeners to explore lean-ISD and how it could transform their own training programs.
That would be awesome.
Until next time, keep diving deep.